We're back and we're playing the Uliana ending. Day 4. I felt warmth in my dream. Alright, we fell asleep in the library. It happens sometimes. Your brain is not completely awake yet. But you still feel the sun shining in your eyes, and when you wake up, you blink for some time to get used to the light. It was a wonderful morning. The birds were singing, the air was fresh and fragrant, and the world was bathed in daylight. I'd stay in bed for some time longer, but something was not quite right. All yesterday's evenings flashed through my mind. Scary and not so scary stories. Juliana, who was cuddled up to me tightly and snoring, not quite like a little girl would. But I didn't worry at all. After all, it's still early. Surely no later than 7 or 8 o'clock. You'd want to go to the library that early. I sat back and looked out the window. In a couple of minutes, the sun will hit right in Juliana's eyes. That's when you're gonna wake up. It's interesting. How did she manage to hug me so tightly? Indeed, I couldn't free myself at all. Theoretically, I was ready to spend 1 or more hours lying this way, but suddenly I heard footsteps. Sounds like trouble. Wake up, do you hear me? Wake up! I started, carefully but insistently shaking Juliana by her shoulders. I tried to loosen her grip, but it was all in vain. Meanwhile, the footsteps were getting louder. I have to save us at any cost. Standing up seems unworkable. That's what I learned already, so I decided to crawl. My moves strongly resembled reservist training, which I never attended. Alright, a soldier dragging his injured officer while under an artillery attack. The officer is unconscious, the soldier is exhausted, and layers of barbed wire surround them. I barely managed to crouch behind a bookstand and hide Juliana when the library door opened. This is not how physics work. You could just push her off and get up if you wanted to. Genya was standing on the doorstep. She seemed a bit overcommitted to her work since she is coming in at the crack of dawn. Wait, said Electronic. I heard a familiar voice. Huh? A visitor. So she indeed does have a reason to come here. Why wouldn't she come yesterday or today, but later? Why couldn't she? Science wait for nobody. Science. It was Electronic. Hold on for a second. I'll find it. She headed toward us. I barely managed to turn Juliana around so that she was on my back and crawled on all fours to a nearby bookshelf, where I collapsed and tried to catch my breath. What was it? Cybernetic mathematics? Or mathematical cybernetics? Seems she didn't notice us. I'd like something about the electronic bombardment of photovoltaics. I don't know what that is. Are you crazy? Why would we have something military? That's not military at all. For some time they were both silent. Genya, what? Let's go down to the river tonight. What for? Well, just have other things to do. Come on, get moving. Your robot is waiting for you. Okay, the door slamming was like an epitaph for Electronic's love struggles. Seems like he's not a cold-blooded robot after all, I chuckled quietly. Anyway, laughter seems a bit inappropriate. We have to escape the library somehow. Waiting until Xenia goes for breakfast seems to be the easiest solution at the moment. She's a communist labor worker after all. Not one of Electronic's mythical robots. She has to at least eat sometime. Oh, alright. Meanwhile, Juliana wasn't going to wake up. At least she's not snoring anymore. The library was silent. I didn't see Zhenya, but was more or less satisfied with the situation. All of a sudden, incomprehensible noises came from her desk. Clicks, cracks, and music started. The Soviet anthem? Just great. It would have been alright if not for Zhenya, who started to sing along. United forever in friendship and labor. I could only envy her patriotic feelings. Unfortunately, she had some vocal issues. The Soviet pop scene definitely didn't miss out on a star called Zhenya. The anthem ended and an unfamiliar voice started to talk about the overachievements of a 5-year plan to crop harvesting. It was a radio, obviously. I started listening attentively. Maybe they would say something interesting. But after the list of agricultural achievements, the void started to disappear and was gone in a few minutes. Signal disturbance, probably. Zhenya stood up and headed towards us. Situations hitting rock bottom. I managed to unclench Uliana's grip with a titanic struggle. I was free to go, but was so cramped from all this crouching that I didn't have the strength to get up. It is time to prepare for the worst and start thinking of excuses. Suddenly, steps stopped. It seems like Zhenya was standing on the other side of the bookshelf. I heard the sound of books rustling. She's probably looking for something. She took a book and returned to her desk. The door slammed open. "Semyon?" asked Olga. "Have you seen him?" Olga was definitely out of breath. "Uliana?" "No," says Zhenya with surprise. The door was slammed as loudly as the previous time. It seems like everyone is looking for us, and Zhenya will start to look around in the library. But fortunately, that very moment the bell sounded in the distance, calling pioneers for breakfast. Zhenya, being a punctual person, decided not to linger and left the library in a few minutes. There was only me and Uliana left in the library. Then it was time to decide what to do with her. No longer afraid of being caught, I bent down and shouted in her ear, "Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey." She instantly jumped and started looking around. Noticing me, Uliana's eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" "Playing at spies?" "Huh? Never mind. Did you sleep well?" "Yes." Seems like she's not yet completely conscious. "Breakfast?" "Yes." We left the library. At last. Now it was certain that I won't have to explain to anyone the what, how, and why of Uliana and myself being there all night long. Sorry for falling asleep like that. It's all right. I guess my words sounded too insincere because she looked at me with disbelief. "Wait a minute. What were you doing there all this time?" "You wouldn't believe me." "Wait a moment. That means..." Uliana giggled, stepped away from me, and shouted loudly, "I'm the first for breakfast." Not a big surprise after such deep sleep, I said, but Uliana already couldn't hear me being far ahead. It was unusually crowded near the canteen. Of course, there was no other place in the camp that pioneers loved as much as the canteen. But why were they all crowding on the porch? He's missing, isn't he? Came closer, trying to find out what was happening. Wait, where on earth have you been? I waited for you all night long, and I've been searching since early morning. Uliana told me that you left the library together yesterday. I looked at Uliana. She was grinning acrimoniously. Well, we'll deal with this later. Have you seen Sherry today? Nope, what's the matter? Ring! But I was stopped by Olga. You, Simeon, please stay here. Yeah? Would you care to explain where you've been all night? Well, this is the thing I hadn't thought about. True, this could have gone by unnoticed. I could have thought of some clear explanation at least, but I hadn't. Well, me and Uliana were placing the books on the shelves, but then she locked me in there and ran away. I was stuck in there until morning. I was at the library today, and I didn't see you there. Kind of aware of that. Well, I left quietly. Why is Uliana telling me something completely different? Why might that be? You know what her stories are like. Yes, you might be right. Camp leader paused for a moment. Just don't think this means I believe you. I didn't think that. Okay, we'll deal with this later. I won't forget. She will forget. She will not deal with this later. My guess is. It is more important to find Shirk now. Yeah, dismissed. Here we go. Yet again, I had no choice. Wait, is this day 4? Bus stop. Here, go with me. What's that? But food poisoning from the canteen. Let's not ask about it. Here, let's give it to her. Eat the apple. Not. Alright, and since these... Yeah, might as well go alone. But I kind of want to see, what does this say here? If you've had... If you had at least one good ending, if you selected all the correct answers for Miko's route, turn left or right a couple of times in the mine. If it had all the good endings and Miko's ending, if you select the correct answers for Julia's route and turn left or right a couple of times in the mine. I'm guessing that is when I go alone to get to those endings. Probably. Go right, go right, go right. Go right. Go through all this. Colgate Innotubs shows up. Good morning. That's a mistake. You don't actually have to turn anywhere in the mines on those endings. Oh, so they if I go alone to the mines with those endings, they will just happen? Is that what you're saying, Colgate in on tap? Like if I have the prerequisites, these endings will happen if I go alone. Am I understanding that correctly? Yes, I am. Very nice. Thank you. Get the wire. So let's go to the clubhouse. And we say no. Juice. Go play, I suppose. None of this matters, it seems like. Nope. Elise's book. Nope. Alright, and now we stay seated and go to Uliana. Here we go. Still have two things to say to her, I suppose. Alright. Plenty of time. I didn't think about Uliana that evening at all. The thing with the cake, like it didn't even happen. Though I remembered well her resentful, disappointed face. Maybe in some other situation I would never have decided to go to her, but now I find reason to leave this place and end this stupid hike has appeared. Recalling that Olga told me to be prepared for new tasks, I decided not to ask for her permission, and after choosing a proper moment, I disappeared into the woods. Night. From the camp. Mentally thanked the camp leader for not researching the land too well, since this meant civilization was only a few hundred meters away. What? Right. Another long walk through the night tourist was not in my plans. Soon I came to the square and hesitated. Won't it look silly? What would I tell her now? Moreover, why would I go to see her in the first place? My head was so heavy and full that there was no room in it for development of any ideas. If I would compare my brain at its prime to a broad highway full of speeding thoughts, overtaking each other, then now it was gotten tiny path. So it's better not to think about anything and just act. But where should I go? Maybe to her cabin? What if she's not there? All of a sudden, something knocked me down and I fell to the asphalt. It's a good thing I had time to stretch out my arms, otherwise I would have broken my nose. Gotcha! I quickly got up from the ground and saw Uliana standing before me. What are you doing? I couldn't stop myself from shouting despite my best efforts. You shouldn't be stargazing, she answered viciously. What if I had smashed my nose or had a broken arm? I said more calmly. Well, neither of those happened. Look, why do you always mock me? I already regretted my decision to try to and ease her loneliness. Was today's punishment not enough for you? Can you even draw simple conclusions? It's entirely your fault. The smile instantly disappeared from Uliana's face. What exactly is my fault? Everything. You mean I am to blame all the time? Yes. She crossed her hands in front of her chest and turned away. Great. I suddenly wanted to get away from this place as fast as possible, but it was because of you I came here. What? I guess you're quite bored, given that everyone is hiking and you're here all alone. I don't care, she yelled cheerfully. Well, if things are that way, what do you want to do? What do you mean? Well, if you came here because of me, such a thought hadn't occurred to me. Although I don't really know what I came here for. After such a greeting, I no longer want to do anything. Then it's up to me to choose, said Uliana cheerfully and started to think. I stared at her for some time, but then I couldn't stand it. Listen, if you are again planning to, I know, let's scare the others. We'll dress up as ghosts, for example. It's going to be so fun. I didn't find this funny anyway. Enough of that already. I began tiredly, but broke off. Maybe that's not such a bad idea. After all, by the time she thinks it's all over and gathers all she needs, Olga and the pioneers will already be back. If I came here because of Uliana, then I need to play along. Perhaps you're right. What? She was looking at me with her eyes wide open. Are you going to agree just like that? Well, what's so wrong about it? And furthermore, if you insist. She studied me attentively for several seconds and then rattled off. Excellent. Then we need some bedsheets. We want to look like real ghosts, don't we? Probably. You go get them, Rihanna announced imperiously. Where do you think I'm going to get them? Take them from your cabin, obviously. It wasn't that obvious to me, so you don't want to? She instantly made a gloomy face. Okay. I recalled the fact that there were spares. That there were spare sets of bed linen in Olga's wardrobe, so maybe there was nothing to worry about. We approached the camp leader's cabin, and I said to Iliana, "Wait for me here." "Sir, yes, sir." She rattled off and saluted me. It seemed Uliana was entirely immersed in the game. I quickly found 2 clean white bedsheets. It's a shame they're going to get smudged, cut, and ripped. Rip and tear. Here, take it. I handed one of those bedsheets to her. It's too large for me, Liana said after twirling it in her hands. No wonder, considering her height. Give it to me. I folded the bedsheet in half and gave it back to her. It's much better now. Follow me. She put the white cloth over her head and ran into the forest. Wait, I threw myself after her. Just a few minutes later, we were near the pioneers' campfire, hiding behind the trees. Banana Waffle Monkey says, "Oh, of course the cloth is white." I mean, what else? It's a bedsheet. Right? Bedsheets are always white. Well, not always, perhaps. I've got blue ones, but like almost always. And I'm sure, like in 80s Soviet. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something, Banana. Now it was clear that the trick, harmless at first, was taking an unpleasant twist. For some reason, I was sure from the start that the hike would end before Uliana took any actions, and now we were standing 10 meters away from the pioneers, dressed in bed sheets. We didn't look frightening at all, rather looked comical. Colgate Inotab says, "Oh, I have blue ones too." Alright then. The Banana Waffle Monkeys ones are navy, so perhaps not. It's just a stereotype in my mind that are always white. Like anytime you go to what's it called? A hotel, you get white bed sheets, right? I like the dark colors. Easier on the eyes. Get ready, on my command. Wait, actually, I was joking when I agreed to all of this. Think again, it won't do you any good. You will get yourself put under house arrest until the end of the shift. And so will I. No retreat, no surrender. Are you ready? On the count of 3. I started scrolling through all the possible outcomes in my head feverishly. There weren't many of them. First one, me and Uliana ran out from behind the trees and started the pioneers laughing, resulting in me getting a considerable scolding from the camp leader and possibly something even worse. And Uliana is sentenced to the highest measure of punishment feasible under the laws of the pioneer camp. Second one, I stay here and observe with the others how Uliana run around the glade in a bedsheet. She is sentenced to the highest measure, like in the first option, and I say relatively safe. Third one, I do everything possible to prevent her from committing this act of moral vandalism. Isn't that a bit excessive? Moral vandalism? Seriously? No one suffers, but her self-esteem. Why not let her have her fun? I mean, I get that it's difficult for him. It would be difficult for me to run out in a bedsheet and doing that. It's not in my personality to do something like this. But will she really get punished? I know, like, she wasn't allowed to come. So maybe Olga would get super pissed. Oh, I don't know. It all could have gone so well, but either of those thoughts took more than 3 seconds. Or Uliana shortened the count, so I hadn't managed to pull myself together in time when she sprang out of the glade, screaming inhumanly. As expected, the pioneers laughed loudly. Someone even fell from the log he was sitting on and started rolling on the ground. I tried to save the day and yelled as loud as possible so Uliana would hear me, but not the others. Colgate Inatap says, it's not about scaring the others, it's but participating that counts. Yeah, exactly. I think for Uliana that's the case as well. It's just about having a laugh. Like, that's her whole personality. It's about having a laugh, right? Banana Waffle Monkey says, I wish fire looked like that when I light them. Like electricity? Yeah, it's kind of weird. She's almost standing on the fire. Fool, stop it! Come here! Oh? I don't know whether it was my persuasion that worked or Uliana understood that her performance had failed, but she ran in my direction quickly and, without pausing, hid herself in the forest. I didn't hesitate to follow her. Such a finale left a tiny chance that she won't be punished again. It's good that I didn't join in the tragicomical act. Now I need to find Uliana. It turned out not to be that hard, as she hadn't managed to get that far. Uliana was sitting on a tree stump, crying. Stood still, hesitating. Maybe it's not about having a laugh. Of course, such an outcome was to be expected. But now I had absolutely no idea what to do or how to comfort her. And besides, I had gone back to the camp intentionally, and I had agreed to participate in that show, and then I didn't. But it just got worse. As well as that, I was tired unto death. At that moment, I wished it would all just cease to exist. I just wanted to close my eyes and appear elsewhere. Preferably in a quiet, peaceful place. But the sight of sobbing Uliana obliged me to take action. I walked up to her and sat down on the ground. Well, what were you expecting anyway? I began philosophically. It was sure to end up this way. You're to blame for everything. You! He's supposed to be comforting her, says Banana Waffle Monkey, and yet instead he starts thinking about himself. Yeah, it was the same thing. It's like he agreed, and then he didn't help with the scaring. Like, he knows how to scare people, right? It's not about running in and doing a thing. I misunderstood. I thought she was just wanting to have a laugh, but maybe she didn't. Maybe she wanted just a friend to do something with, and he could have made what they did scary. They could have scared them if they wanted to. Like, just she doesn't know better. And now, as you say, he's supposed to be comforting her, but no. He's a bit of a dick, this Semyon. As well, I mean, we have to. Yeah, Uliana betrayed her. Semyon betrayed her, says Kogit on tap. Yeah, but at this very moment as well, it's like always. We have to as well consider that Semyon is like super depressed in real life, and one consequence of depression is very narcissistic behavior. Like depression is a very self-centered state of mind. He's been in that narcissistic mode of mind for a long time. Like one way I've been looking at many of these stories is about him breaking out from that narcissistic frame of mind. There we go, frame of mind is what we call it. And that is one way of getting out of his depressive frame of mind. Like, I'm thinking that the end here is like, I was talking about this the other day, that he's always learning something. Here, it's again taking responsibility for someone other than himself. Because as you say, he's supposed to be comforting her. Uliana shouted in tears. So, what would have changed if I sprung out with you back there, Dick? We both would have been laughed at, that's all. You always act this way, always. Her sobbing was becoming louder and louder. And then suddenly rushed at me and started pounding on my chest with her fists. The hits were not hard. It was more like an attempt to take out the despair that had gripped Uliana than a real wish to beat me up. Calm down already, I said firmly. She stopped crying for a second and hugged me. Maybe nothing would have changed, but it would have been more comfortable for me if we went together. Banana Moccasins works every time. Yeah, calm down. Stop crying. Oof. I didn't know what to say, so I just patted her on the head. Can I stay like this for a bit longer? Yes. At that time, she didn't seem like a dangerously explosive nuclear reactor in the form of a little girl, but just like a little sister of mine who'd messed things up. I wasn't mad at her at all. On the contrary, it seemed that I too was beginning to care about the failure of the ghost play acting. Yeah. Do you have a confidence? Is that it? A little voice in your head telling you, oh man, I was such a dick. I need to make it up to her. It's alright, it's alright. We'll scare them properly next time. Yeah, said. I don't know for how much longer we sat in silence. Uliana stopped crying, and I didn't want to disturb her, as she had just calmed down. But I also had absolutely no desire to stay in the forest overnight. Hey, let's go back to the camp. I shook her shoulders gently, but there was no answer. She had fallen asleep yet again. Hey, I shook her harder. No effect. At that moment, I wanted to cry. Why does this always happen to me? Why do I get caught up in these foolish situations, always and everywhere? Even having seen this before. I'll skip it though. Even having suddenly appeared in a weird pioneer camp in the middle of nowhere, I don't get to become a subject in an experiment, a victim of a sick cosmic mind, or a participant in an intergalactic war on the side of a group of suicide-prone pacifists like a regular hero of science fiction. No, instead I have to spend the night in the forest with a little girl in my arms who is muffled in a bedsheet. Where's the bedsheet? No, we have to show up the little child's ass for some fucking reason. bothers me. It bothers me so much. Next time, I'd rather have the monstrous experiments. I stood up and put the sleeping Uliana on my back. Maybe there was a way to wake her up, but firstly, I didn't want to, and secondly, one more burden or one less at that point made no difference. It's good that she's not heavy. At the square, I stopped, put Uliana on a bench, and threw myself down beside her, totally exhausted. Even a little girl is hard to carry for too long. The stars in the sky were shining brightly. Perhaps they give their light not only to me and this camp. Banana Waffle says, well, there goes his arm. Yeah. People sleeping on his arm all the time. Not only to me in this camp, but also they shine on the city where I was born, where my old home is. It was if a pain settled in my chest. Yeah, we've seen this before as well. I envisioned my old flat clearly, and a detestable burning started to make its way from my stomach to my throat. No, it was not wistfulness, more like a sad reminiscence. Because despite all that had happened, I've felt more alive in less than 5 days here than I had for the last several years there. And now, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to go back. Only one question still ate at me. How and why I ended up here. It flared up yet again in my mind. I haven't spent much time seeking answers or even just thinking about my situation lately. My thoughts were occupied with everyday routine affairs. It's like we did this yesterday. It's just that even a nightingale in a golden cage has a right to know how and by whose will he got there. Yeah, it's this rant about him not having... Wait. I don't know how much longer I would have been devoted to existential thoughts. But Juliana's loud snoring brought me back to reality. Oh, so small, but she snores so loudly. I sighed, put Juliana on my back again, and headed towards her cabin. I had no desire to explain everything to Alisa, so I just put the sleeping Juliana on the porch, knocked at the door, and left quickly. I approached Olga's cabin with mixed feelings. On the one hand, I had done what I intended to do. I had comforted and entertained Uliana. On the other hand, the two crumpled bedsheets in my hands looked more like rags left over from some worn-out straitjacket. I opened the door softly and went in. Semyon! Olga was sitting at the desk, and it seemed she had been waiting for me. Do you want to explain something to me? Well, just don't scold her again. It's my fault. Just like that, I became a hero to my own surprise. My tongue acted fast and faster than my thoughts. Perhaps some of my best traits, which I wasn't even aware of, had shown themselves. Humanity as opposed to common sense. Really? Having started this, I chose to stick to my decision. Well, it was me who got the best bedsheets, and I was standing behind a tree back then. Behind what tree? The captain looked at me in astonishment. But what did you need bedsheets for? I realized my mistake. So, you're not talking about the first thing? Semyon, I don't understand you. I wanted to know where you disappeared to so mysteriously during the hike. But now, I would be more interested in listening to your bedsheet story. But it was impossible that she and all the others hadn't seen Leanna's performance. The pioneers laughing out loud couldn't have been only my imagination. Olga, I'm serious. Didn't you see someone in the bedsheet spring out at you recently? So it was you. She gave me a closer look. No, it wasn't me. Couldn't you tell? Just from my height? But you're holding the bedsheets. Yes. I couldn't understand if she was playing me for a fool or she didn't know what this was all about. Olga, let's act like this conversation never happened. I'm too tired for today. All right, go to bed. To my surprise, she readily agreed. Indeed, of course. I was astonished by such a reaction, but I decided to use the moment. I wrapped a blanket around myself and turned to face the wall. But I couldn't sleep. There were no thoughts. My head was aching, but I still couldn't manage to fall asleep. I rolled to the other side, and images of the day started to flash before my eyes. I shut my eyes tight to drive them away, but it didn't work. Suddenly, I heard a knocking at the window. Olga seemed to be asleep. I dressed myself and walked outside. Juliana was standing before me with a tricky smile. How did you manage to carry me to the cabin? Wasn't it hard? Not really. What have you come for? Couldn't sleep, but at that moment, bed seemed to be the only place where I could reside with no suffering, which is why Juliana's sudden visit didn't please me at all. How was he? Did you get scolded? No, I avoided it somehow. That's great then. I always get lucky. That's for sure. My eyes began closing despite my will. It seems that slumber has finally come up upon me. Look, I'm very tired. This won't take long. Close your eyes. It was the easiest thing to do, and I didn't even want to know what she needed it for. Maybe that way she would leave me alone sooner. I closed my eyes. And in that moment I felt a brief kiss. My eyes opened themselves, but Juliana was already running away, waving her hand to me. I stood still, benumbed, and I couldn't even manage to shout anything after her. I don't know for how long I stood there like that, but eventually the night chill cleared my stupor. I shivered and went back to bed. This time I didn't want to sleep. I wanted to think it all through, but my eyes, which had begun to close as I was standing before Juliana, seemed to issue a command to the rest of the body, and I fell asleep before I realized what happened. Oh, hello, Swin Tuporlov. Oh, it's cute and pure. I mean, yeah, I guess for me it's a bit tainted by how they have been painting Juliana in some of the other pictures. Like, the pureness is tainted. But it is cute, I agree with that. Even though he didn't deserve it. Fucking traitor. But he did carry her back, I suppose. That's nice of him. I'm about to kiss, says Sven Tuporlov. I think. I'm sorry if I messed up that name. Yeah, I'm talking about the kiss as well. I can't say that my morning was good. Instead, I woke up absolutely broken. The room was filled with bright sunlight. Outside, the window birds were lightheartedly chirping. I reluctantly dragged myself into a sitting position and stretched. I slowly started to recall the events of the previous day. A trip, a silly ghost name, Liana falling asleep, and... there we go. A kiss. I blushed immediately. It was so surprising that I'd been knocked out of reality for a while. The main problem is, how should I treat her now? At first glance, nothing special had happened, but besides, she's the last girl in the whole camp from which one would expect such actions. She seemed to me at best, like a little sister, nothing more. Yeah. But for her, apparently I was more than a big brother. Where does he get that from? Though perhaps I just imagined all that, and there was no hidden meaning, no deep motives or allusions to far-reaching conclusions in this kiss. Yeah, I agree with that. He's just imagining, just an expression of gratitude. Yeah, there we go. Liana is definitely capable of extraordinary deeds, and could easily turn simple things into complicated ones. Finally, I decided to put off the matter till the time I could meet her face to face. Colgate in on tap points out that Semyon is not very good at reading social situations. Indeed, he is not very good at it. I mean, not everybody is, I suppose. The clock showed 11. That's also like a consequence of depression, right? Not being like the depression narcissism bit. The narcissistic thoughts makes you not very good at reading social situations. It's difficult when you're in a narcissistic frame of mind to imagine what someone else is thinking. It's like what narcissism is all about, right? Can't get out of your own head, understanding that there are other people in this world. It's rough. It's rough. The clock showed 11, meaning Olga didn't wake me up for breakfast. And also being alone doesn't give much experience on human interaction. Yeah, practice makes perfect, right? Colgate in on tap. She didn't wake him up, that's weird. However, I shouldn't worry. There wasn't much time left until lunch. I took my bag of washing accessories and went to do my water procedures. I didn't meet anybody on the way. Probably all the pioneers are busy with their own things. The place near the bases was deserted too. Just 5 minutes later, I again stood in front of the camp leader's cabin, thinking of what to do next. Nothing worthwhile having come to my head, I sat in the deck chair. Possibly I could have stayed there until lunch, but I was drawn from my trance by a familiar voice. "Hi," said Slavia. I looked up and saw Slavia, who was smiling at me sweetly. "Hi, you overslept again?" "Seems like it." "That's no good." "Perhaps. Where are you going?" "Actually, I was not really interested in Slavia's agenda for today, but I wanted to keep the conversation going." "Well, I've got some things to do." "I see." Silence followed. She was about to leave when suddenly I said, "Mind sitting with me for a while?" "Sure, why not?" Flavia sat nearby. "Something's worrying you, isn't it?" "No, why do you think so?" "I can read it on your face." She laughed softly. "Not really. Although probably Slavia was right, something really was worrying me. Obviously, I worried about last night's events. Listen, do you have a little brother or sisters?" "I do." "And how do you get along?" "Pretty well." She smiled wildly. "And you?" "No, I don't," I said after a short pause. "So why are you asking?" "I don't know, just do you always understand them?" "I try to. Sometimes I cannot make out what children want." Suddenly, I stopped for a moment. Slavia doesn't know that I'm actually much older than I look. To her, I'm still a child myself. Those who are younger, I mean. "Why?" "Well, I cannot always understand the motivations of their actions. They often behave illogically." Got your mistake right there. Thinking people are logical creatures. It's, it's not what we're like. "Weren't you as old as them some time ago?" She looked at me with surprise. Of course I was. That moment seemed to me that it had been a very long time ago. And when I looked at Uliana that time, wait, and when I looked at Uliana that time turned into a gulf of years. Well, think of yourself at that time. I was different. At least it seemed like that to me. If so, good for you. Slavia laughed again. And you? Did you also do stupid things? It depends on what age you're talking about. Well, let's say age of 14, for instance. Well, different things were happening, she said thoughtfully. Okay, that's nice, but it still doesn't make anything clear. Maybe that's the way it should be. Maybe. Slavia stood up, wished me goodbye, and left. I closed my eyes and fell asleep. Dot, dot, dot. The sound of the bell calling the pioneers for lunch woke me up. Although the sound was quiet and was coming from far away, my body worked like clockwork, like a clockwork automaton, and in due time I was standing near the door of the canteen. And that's where I met Uliana. Hi there. Yeah. I already ate, she laughed and brightly ran away. I didn't stop her. After all, I had nothing to say to her. I took a meal and was already heading to my favorite place in the corner when suddenly somebody grabbed me by the hand. Sit down right here. Lisa's voice sounded menacing, but at the same time somehow pleading. What happened? I've got something to discuss with you, he said with a slightly softer tone. Okay, sat down next to her. So what's the subject? You were there yesterday when she played that dumb prank with the bedsheet. It was pointless to lie to Elisa. Yeah, I was there. She laughed out loud. Why on earth did you do that? Elisa instantly became serious and gave me a level look. Why don't you ask her? No, I'm asking you, so you have to talk. I don't know, I rasped. Or you better tell me. Why didn't the camp leader react? How should she react? I think you know. I looked at her skeptically. Well, she just didn't realize who it was. Well, I must admit that Olga's deductive abilities leave much to be desired. And then, it was you who brought her back last night. Nope, Shakespearean elves did that, I said mockingly. What's the problem with that? No problem at all. Elisa stared at her plate and started to eat with concentration. Also, she ran off somewhere during the night and came back in that happy mood. And don't you know anything about that? Even if I do, why do you care? She gave me an intense gaze. Well, I do care. I would have never thought that she would be concerned about someone beside herself. Nothing like that happened, if you'd like to know. No, it's not about that, Elisa replied shortly without looking at me. Probably it was a bad idea to bring up this subject. By the way, what's that like that? What do you mean? What you just said. What is that I just said? I tried to joke around to confuse her. Hey, listen to me. I'm watching you. Ooh, I'm so scared, I said roughly. I took my tray and left the table. I definitely wasn't afraid of Elisa's word, even though they sounded like a threat. In fact, I was more interested in her concern for Uliana. Of all the local inhabitants, she was surely the last one you would expect to worry about another person. Except Uliana, since they're in the same, they're in the same room, right? I walked out of the canteen and into a real furnace. The sun blazed so ruthlessly that nobody could stay under his scorching rays. The sun is a he, eh? It was time to find some cool and shady place, and the beach seemed like the best place for this. The beach? The beach doesn't have any shade. The water is cold, I suppose. Oddly enough, the beach was not crowded. Perhaps most of the pioneers were scared of the scorching heat. Yeah, exactly. Or maybe they just decided to take a nap after lunch. I'm gonna take a nap after lunch today. I didn't bring my swimming trunks, so I just sat under an umbrella. Oh, umbrellas. So there is shade. I began to watch the swimmers. There was no one I knew, and it was better that way, as I had an opportunity to sit quietly and think. 5.5 days has already passed since my arrival, and what's changed? There were a couple of unexplained but completely harmless events, but all in all, it was just a regular pioneer camp. Hello. This was making me even more frightened. What was going to happen next? Another day, another week. What's going to happen after the session's over? Got nowhere to return to. Maybe in this time I hadn't been born yet. Even worse. After thinking all of this over for a few minutes, I went back to yesterday evening. Strange, but I worried about it much more than before. On the one hand, I wanted to say something to make the situation clear, but on the other hand, but on the other hand, I avoided any meeting with Juliana by all means, afraid of making a fool out of myself with a wrong word or gesture. I closed my eyes and dozed off for a while. Then, when I woke up, I saw Lena by my side. "Oh, how long have you been sitting here?" I asked in surprise. "Not too long." Strange that she didn't wake me up. Did something happen? I don't know why, but my sixth sense was telling me that she's eager to say something, but doesn't dare. "No, what about you?" "Neither. Are you sure?" "Of course," I smiled. "What do you want to talk about?" "Why do you think I want to talk?" "It seems like it." "Nah, not really." Long silence ensued. "Do you have any brothers or sisters?" "No. What about you?" "I don't." What would you ask that?" "Sometimes I think I don't understand children at all." "Me too." Anna's face didn't express anything. "But it's probably got to be like that." "Got to be? What do you mean? How should I treat them then?" "Treat them the way you think is right." Oof. Well, that's the whole idea. I don't know what is right and what is wrong. Good thing you don't, because there is none. The more you think about it, the more you'll regret the mistake. That is an interesting statement, though. Like, in general, like if you've made a mistake or something that you regret, the more you think about it, the more you will regret it. But if you just let it go, you'll forget about it faster, the less you will regret it. Well, that's true, but it doesn't help. Yeah, at the same time, letting go is not that easy. Letting go includes mulling it over. I was somewhat surprised by such profound words from Lena. Of course, she said all that with a trace of shyness or modesty and without inappropriate openness, but still. "You mean that I should follow the first idea I get off the top of my head?" I laughed. "As the saying goes, your first thought is the right one." That's so stupid. So many dimensions and so many levels. "You believe that?" "I don't know." We sat there for some time, and then she stood up. "Well, I've got to go. Thanks for the conversation. Don't mention it." Anna smiled faintly. I lay down and stared at the burning sun. "Your first thought is right, huh? And what if my first thought was to kiss her back?" Ugh. Ooh. By the way, what was the first thought that came to me at that time. I tried painfully hard to remember, but nothing worked. Not even scraps of thought surfaced in my brain. However, in that situation, I could only follow Lena's advice, since it all happened so suddenly. The sun was setting slowly, so I rose and went towards the canteen, as my stomach told me that even the participant in such a fantastic story should have regular meals. Somebody called to me at the square. It was electronic. He ran up to me, caught my breath, and said, "Semyon." "Yeah, that's probably me." "Take it." He handed me some kind of key. "What's this?" "It's the key to our clubhouse." "Why would I want it?" "Olga asked me to consider that I will not be returning there today. So give it to Sherrick. He has his own business. So take it yourself." "I can't." "Why not?" "Listen, just take it." "Why would I need it? What am I going to do to it?" "You'll give it back to me later." "Listen, well, I have to go." He shoved the key into my hand and ran. No matter how you look at it, he is definitely staged. However, I didn't pay significant attention to this event and just put the key in my pocket. Sounds reasonable. I got to the canteen even before dinner, and it's time for me as well to eat, to have some lunch. All right, and we'll continue this probably tomorrow.